scary moment as we went to commercial. Sophie Cunningham hit the floor hard, and
Sophie Cunningham. Oh, man. I got to tell you, this victory, it came with a big price.
In one of the scariest moments of the season, Sophie Cunningham went down with a hard crash that froze the entire arena in silence. Indiana Fever fans were still trying to process what had just happened when the painful truth became clear. This wasn't just another fall, this was the heart and soul of the team collapsing right in front of them. For weeks, Sophie had been the glue keeping the Fever together in Caitlin Clark's absence, the fighter and defender who never backed down no matter how rough opponents played against Indiana, but in a single instant, that fire was ripped away. When Bria Hartley, already known for reckless fouls and cheap shots, collided straight into Sophie's knee, leaving her screaming in pain and unable to get up. The scene was chilling, the atmosphere heavy, and many immediately feared this might be the breaking point for a Fever squad already beaten down by injuries, written off by critics, and now robbed of their toughest warrior. Yet what happened after that moment shocked everyone and turned the story of this game into something far bigger than basketball.
Sophie Cunningham went out in the first half. And that was such a huge blow for the Indiana Fever because Sophie Cunningham has been somebody, she has been the glue of this team since Caitlin has been out.
The injury looked like something straight out of a nightmare. Bria Hartley drove baseline with Kelsey Mitchell shadowing her, and Sophie slid over to help, but in that instant, Hartley lost control, fell, and her full weight came crashing down across Sophie's planted leg. Sophie immediately clutched her knee, her face twisted in agony, and that was the moment everyone realized this wasn't the kind of hit you just shake off. She's the type of player who pops right back up after hard contact, who shrugs off bruises and keeps fighting, but this time there was no bounce, no laugh, only raw pain as teammates rushed to her side. The Fever bench stood frozen, the fans held their breath, and as the cameras cut to commercial, the harsh truth hit home. The defensive anchor who had been the backbone of Indiana in Caitlin Clark's absence might have just been lost for the season. The worst part was that it didn't feel like an unavoidable accident, because this came at the hands of a player with a history, a player already known across the league for reckless fouls and cheap shots, a player whose name instantly reignited debates about whether the WNBA has lost control of its officiating. Bria Hartley's track record speaks louder than any replay, and that is why fans immediately called foul on this so-called collision. This wasn't just one ugly moment, it was part of a clear pattern. Just last week, Bria Hartley yanked Angel Reese by the ponytail and dragged her across the floor like it was a wrestling match. Before that, she pulled Becca Allen down by the head and sent her crashing to the court. And who can forget the clash with Ariel Atkins when she had to be physically separated after another reckless play. It's been one dirty incident after another, and somehow Hartley keeps slipping away without real punishment, building a record of cheap shots that any other league would have shut down months ago. That's the real problem, because when a player with this history is allowed to run wild without consequences, moments like Sophie Cunningham's injury stop feeling like bad luck and start looking like the inevitable result of negligence. Fans saw Sophie lying on the floor with tears streaming down her face, and what they felt wasn't just heartbreak, it was anger. Anger at Hartley, anger at the Sun, anger at the referees, and anger at a league office that seems to be asleep while star after star is taken out by reckless, dangerous play. What made this moment even more devastating was who Sophie has become for Indiana, because since Caitlin Clark went down, she hasn't just filled a gap, she has taken ownership of the team's entire identity. She's the one diving for loose balls, locking up the opponent's top scorer, firing up her teammates when the game slips, and putting her body on the line every single possession. She wasn't just another role player, she was the glue, the enforcer, and the emotional spark that turned a fragile Fever squad into fighters. Losing her wasn't about missing a few points on the board, it felt like ripping the heart straight out of the roster. Sophie was averaging double figures, knocking down shots from deep, and doing all the dirty work nobody else wanted to do, and then in an instant, she was on the ground screaming, clutching her knee, while Indiana stared at the possibility of their season collapsing for good. The timing could not have been worse for a team already battered by injuries and fighting just to stay alive in the playoff race, now facing the loss of their toughest soldier. For the Fever, this wasn't just another injury, it was the kind of blow that can crush a locker room spirit, and that's when outrage turned into a firestorm, because it wasn't only fans speaking out, Sophie's family went public immediately. Her sister Lindsay blasted the league on social media, saying maybe instead of fining players for speaking up, the WNBA should hire referees who actually protect athletes, calling the officiating pathetic and downright dangerous. Then her mother, Paula, didn't hold back either, describing Hartley as a disgruntled player who has left trouble everywhere she's gone and flat out labeling her mean-spirited and reckless. These weren't just emotional reactions from family members. They echoed what countless players and fans have been saying for months, that the league is letting this chaos spiral out of control, and the proof was lying right there on the floor. First, crying out in pain, unable to stand, while officials swallowed their whistles on a play that could cost her not just the season, but possibly her career, made it clear this was no longer about a single foul. It had become a referendum on whether the WNBA truly values the safety of its stars, because when a player like Hartley, with a rap sheet of dirty plays longer than a highlight reel, keeps getting chance after chance, the question stops being, was it an accident? And turns into, why is this even allowed to happen in the first place? The heartbreaking part was that Sophie's reaction told the whole story without a single word. She has built her reputation on toughness, the kind of player who shrugs off hits and gets back up when most would stay down, but the instant she clutched her knee, tried to hop once, and collapsed in tears, everyone watching knew something serious had just happened. She tried to stand, she tried to put weight on that leg, but it was impossible, and teammates rushed over as trainers sprinted across the floor. When she was finally helped off, the silence in the arena said it all. For Indiana, already running on fumes with a roster shredded by injuries, it felt like the final straw, and the anger only grew because this wasn't some freak accident. It was the direct result of the league's refusal to clamp down on reckless, dangerous play. For months, players have been slammed, shoved, and dragged like it's a UFC fight, and referees keep letting it slide. Sophie's injury wasn't just an isolated moment, it was the predictable outcome of a season where chaos has been allowed to run unchecked, and now Indiana may have paid the ultimate price. From the opening quarter, this game felt like a powder keg ready to explode, and the officiating only poured gasoline on the fire. Sophie was hacked, shoved, even knocked to the floor 75 feet away from the basket, yet the whistle stayed silent. Instead of stepping in to control the game, the refs actually hit Sophie with an early technical, as if punishing her would somehow cool things down, while Connecticut's players were free to bulldoze through knees and throw bodies around like it was open season. And this isn't just about one night, because this Sun team has built a reputation for a style of play that doesn't just border on physical, it crosses into reckless. Over and over against Indiana, we've seen the same pattern. Dangerous dives at legs, flying elbows, and opponents leaving the court injured. They even wear it like a badge of honor, bragging about toughness when in reality it's reckless. Basketball that looks more like assault. Fans don't tune in to watch UFC, they tune in to watch basketball, and the fact that the WNBA keeps allowing this chaos has left players, coaches, and fans all asking the same question: has the league completely lost control? That is what makes Sophie's loss cut even deeper, because she wasn't just filling a roster spot, she was the one holding the team together when everything else was falling apart. Since the All-Star break, Sophie had been Indiana's most reliable piece, averaging double figures, shooting over 50% from three, and doing the dirty work nobody else wanted to do. She was the protector, the spark, the one who stood up for Caitlin Clark when defenders tried to bully her, and the one who set the tone every night with toughness and fight. For the Fever, losing Sophie isn't just about missing points or rebounds, it's about losing their heartbeat. This is a team already without Clark, already patching holes with hardship deals and short rotations, and now their fiercest competitor might be sidelined just as the playoff push is heating up. It's a devastating blow at the worst possible time, and the fear is simple. Without Sophie, Indiana's slim chance at making the postseason might have disappeared in a single reckless play. By halftime, it felt like the Fever's season was being buried for good, trailing by 19 at the break and seeing the deficit stretch to 21 in the third. With Sophie gone, Indiana looked finished, and most teams would have folded, accepted the loss, and started preparing excuses, but Indiana chose the opposite. They came alive, with Kelsey Mitchell flipping a switch and raining buckets like a superstar on a mission, while Odyssey Sims stepped in with veteran fire just days after signing a hardship contract. And then Lexi Hull drilled the dagger 3 that sealed the impossible. While Aaliyah Boston dominated the boards, Natasha Howard fought relentlessly inside, and even role players who barely saw the floor gave everything they had to keep the fight alive. What unfolded wasn't just a comeback, it was the biggest rally in franchise history. A 21-point swing against one of the league's most physical teams, all without their defensive anchor. It defied the numbers, it defied the odds, and it reminded everyone that the Indiana Fever aren't just a team scraping by. They are a team built on resilience, grit, and the kind of heart you can't measure in a box score. This night was more than basketball. It was heartbreak, and history rolled into one. Sophie Cunningham, the glue of the Fever, went down in brutal fashion, and for a moment it felt like Indiana's season was over, but instead of collapsing, the Fever rose. Kelsey Mitchell delivered a superstar performance. Odyssey Sims and Aaliyah Boston fought like warriors, and Lexi Hull hit the shot that sealed the comeback. What looked like a breaking point became a defining moment, and while Sophie's loss casts a shadow, her toughness and fight lived on through every player who refused to quit. In that process, Indiana showed the league and the world they cannot be counted out, because this wasn't just a win, it was a miracle, a message, and a reminder that no matter how hard they get hit, the Fever will always rise again.